Good morning. I'm Tom at Ledgemere, and because it's got quite a bit of rain coming down today, let's do something a little different. Let's talk about hay. We're a small livestock farm in southern Maine, and I'm a third generation farmer here in town. And one thing that we've always done on our family farms here is to make our own hay and grow our own food for the animals. And to some extent that's still true. My sister and brother-in-law have a fairly large farm, and they grow grains and hays. My other sister and brother-in-law have a farm. They grow their own hay, and for a while I was growing my own hay here too. But the family farm that I have that I was able to get into, the hay land is long gone, and the land that's left, even though it's 60 acres, is very rocky, and so it makes great pastures. But with regard to cutting hay and harvesting it, it's a little bit more challenging because, let's face it, hay equipment does not like rocks. So what that left me with was two choices. Number one, I could harvest my hay using other people's property, or I could buy it. So I'm going to go over some of the decisions I made and the challenges I faced, and the reason why I made these choices to end up ultimately just buying all my own feed. So the first topic is land, and I've already kind of covered it, and so I've told you that my land really isn't conducive to haying. So that left me with finding hay fields that I could haul my equipment to and then grow hay on it, harvest it, and then bring it back here to my farm. And so that left me with a few things to think about. Number one, I had to bring my machinery up to 5 miles away, which doesn't seem like a lot as far as mileage, but if you're driving machinery down the road, and then you get there and something breaks and you have to come back or have somebody bring you something, and that's the case with the heavier machinery like the hay baler. I can't just load it on my trailer and bring it. When I'm mowing or tedding or raking with the mounted equipment, that's a different story. I can load it, put tools in my truck, and then go. But if you're out there and you're baling hay and you run into an issue, now you've got to stop everything, have somebody run out parts, or you got to get back and go get all your pieces, and so you lose a lot of time. The second problem is it's somebody else's land, and you don't really have a lot to say about it. And I know some people will sign leases, they rent the land. That's not really a thing where I live. People mostly just have fields they want cut, and so it's just an exchange. So you go cut the hay and you get to keep the hay, and they get their field mowed, and that's it. So at that point, what's happening is you've got to invest in infrastructure for somebody else's land. So you've got to maybe harrow and replant that whole field, because maybe the crop of hay that's there is weedy, hasn't been harvested in a long time, and ultimately you just need to plow it under and start over. And then you've got upkeep, so you've got to put fertilizer on it, whether you haul manure or you buy commercial fertilizer. So that's another trip out to the land at least twice a year. Lime, another trip out there. You've got a lot of overhead and a lot of expense in somebody else's land to harvest hay. And in an ideal situation, the farmer's going to make all his own feed for his animals, and I get that. Ultimately, you want to be self-sufficient, and so I really enjoyed making the hay, but the part that was always hanging over my head was that it was somebody else's property, and you never knew what was going to happen. And so 5 miles hauling stuff, investing a lot of money in somebody else's land just didn't seem like a worthwhile cause to me. So that was gone. And then I had some of the family fields that I could harvest, but I still left with the problem of hauling my equipment there. And so you're looking at 2 miles away, but that wasn't enough hay to fill the bill to get all my hay in. So then I would have to supplement some of the hay I made with hay that I bought. Now, when we start talking about haying, there's a lot of things involved with haying that people don't necessarily realize until they start doing it. And so, yeah, you have to have equipment, and depending upon which part of the country you live in will determine whether you need to buy like a tedder or not ted. Some people can mow it, condition it, and rake it and bale it. Here in Maine, it's pretty temperate, and it's pouring rain out right now, so you have to have a tedder. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of problems. So I think we all pretty much have an idea of what you need for machinery, but I think what we lack is an overall idea of how much the machinery is going to cost us altogether. And so here in southern Maine, there's not really a lot of auctions around, so you can't really go and just look at a piece of equipment a lot of times and buy it. And the thing I caution you about auctions is sometimes you win, sometimes you don't win. And you might go to an auction and the stuff might look okay, then you bring it home and it doesn't work. That's typically true with a hay baler, because the nodder mechanism, you really want to see that mechanism work before you buy it. If you just buy one that the guy said it worked last year, well, buyer beware. But like, you know, a sickle bar mower, or tedder, rake, things like that, you can pretty much look at that and know if it's going to cut or rake or ted just by looking at the pieces and parts. So I'm just going to give you a breakdown on some machinery. And so a hay mower is what you're going to need to actually, you know, cut the hay. There's different kinds. There's the mower conditioner, which will cut the hay, and then it compresses the hay through rollers and takes out some of the moisture and then spits it out the back. It's called the conditioner. And so in the old days they would have a mower, and then behind it they would drag a conditioner, and then they combined it and made one piece of equipment. And that's a pretty popular option. It's kind of expensive and you need a pretty decent sized tractor to run that. And so I never got one. I always had a sickle bar mower because that's what I grew up with, and I know how to maintain them and tune them up, and the parts and pieces are easy to take care of. Then you got drum mowers, you've got disc mowers, and with all those different kinds of mowers, they don't really like rocks too much. So you hit a rock with a drum mower or a disc mower, you're going to end up leaving part of it in the field. Whereas sickle bar mower is a little bit more forgiving. It's either going to break away, or with the rock guards, they'll go over the rock a little bit. So that's the reason I've always used a sickle mower. A hay tedder is what's going to take some of the moisture and fluff it up, and some people call it a fluffer. There's different kinds of tedders. There's the rotary ones that, like I have, that disperse the hay. There's the old kind like the Peckway or the Grimm that has a reel on it and it just fluffs it up, and that's more like a fluffer. I think the Lely's had one too with the wings that you could close up. So a tedder, you can get them for $500 or so for an old fluffer. When you start talking about the star tedders, you're looking a little bit more money. I had bought a brand new Kuhn 2-star tedder for $2,000 because the used market was non-existent for anything that was any good. And a couple years later, when I bought the combination tedder rake, I was able to recoup the purchase price because I bought it on clearance. I used it 2 seasons and sold it for what I paid for it, so I made out okay with that. But for the most part, when you're looking at buying a tedder, you're going to spend anywhere between $500 and $2,500 for a decent tedder. In some parts of the country, you're not going to need that, so you can wipe that expense out depending on where you are. And then the next thing you're going to need is a hay rake, and what the rake does is it puts it in the windrows so you can come behind it with the baler and pick up that hay and then make bales with it. And so rakes, you can get a pinwheel rake, you can get a rotary rake, you can get side delivery rakes, and it all depends on what kind of field you got. If you've got a rough field, the side delivery rakes kind of miss a lot. The pinwheel rakes are a little better, but they roll the hay up, so when you hit it with the baler, sometimes it'll just pull the whole line of hay and plug the baler up. The pinwheel rakes are cheap. You can get them for $300-400, sometimes $200. I bought one for $150. It just really varies. I ended up liking my side delivery rake, my international side delivery rake, and I really regret selling it because it was just the right size. It was 8 feet, and it's a side delivery, so you come through and it moves the hay over to one side. Easy to pull. You don't need much of a tractor to pull those, and you can get those. I think I paid $150 for that one too, but that's not common, and so you could expect to pay for a decent rake anywhere up to $3,000, for a nice trail behind New Holland or John Deere rake. So then you're gonna need a hay baler, and you could get a square baler, you can get a round baler. There's the old stack wagons. There's a lot of different kinds of balers, and I used I think they were 14 by 16 or 16 by 18 bale. I don't really know the dimensions. It was just a regular John Deere 24T square baler, and I had 4 of them because they don't make them anymore. And so I had 2 good ones, and then I had 2 for parts. And invariably something's going to go wrong, and you're going to need parts, so you end up going to your parts machines. And always happens when you're in the middle of a hay field. So you're trying to get hay baled, and then something breaks, and you need to go back home, tear something off, and put it back on. And there's a place in New York, Green Baler Parts. They remanufacture and do a lot of good work with baler parts. So I bought a lot of stuff off them, and I finally got my balers tying right, and they were good balers when I let them go. But I let them go because of the first reason I told you was that I was hauling it too far, and it didn't make any more sense to do it. But regardless, whether you buy a John Deere or a Geel or New Holland or whatever, you're still going to indubitably at some point break down and need parts. So don't buy some off-the-wall thing that nobody in your area has and you can't get parts for it, because then you're going to be screwed. So you may see something like, a Ford 505 baler for $100 and you buy it, but nobody around you has one, nobody knows how to work on it. The New Holland dealer doesn't supply parts for it anymore. You buy it, you break down, you're pretty much up the creek, right? So with a baler, you got to be really picky about what you get and what the support is and where you can get parts and pieces. And a hay baler, if you buy a round baler, they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but the number of moving parts is less, but then you're going to need a bigger tractor to run it, so you got a lot of moving pieces there, right, to think about when you buy a hay baler. And so with the square baler, you got the ones with the kicker that throws it in the wagon, or you got the ones like I had that just dump it on the ground. I did have a chute, so I could come behind with the wagon on back of the baler and it would slide onto the wagon, but you still needed a person to stack it. So, a baler is going to run you $1,000 to $1,500, maybe $7,500 if you buy a good New Holland, like one of the newer ones. John Deere, Case IH, Massey Ferguson, I think. Definitely New Holland. New Holland's the baler of choice where I live. That's what everybody uses. You don't really see anything else around here anymore. So then you're going to need something to pull all this equipment with, and you can get by with one tractor, but you really need two. You're going to need a smaller tractor to do all your raking and tedding and moving stuff around, and then you're going to need a bigger tractor. And you can do it with one. I've known plenty of people who have done it with one, but just remember, you've got a lot of stuff you're going to be moving around. And then if that tractor breaks down, then you're, again, up the creek. So you figure for a square baler, you're going to need like a 45 horse tractor. And I'm not talking about a compact tractor like a little Kubota or a little John Deere or something. I'm talking about a utility tractor like a 45 horsepower New Holland or, something, a substantial farm tractor. Compact utility is great. You can mow, ted, rake with a compact, but when you get to baling, even though you might have the horsepower, that tractor is just not designed for the pounding and the weight of that baler. So it's not necessarily turning the shaft of the baler. It's you got to hold that baler back when you're going down a hill or pull it up the hill. And so it's just really hard on a compact tractor to do that. Even if you've got a 40 horse compact tractor, it's really not recommended. The dealers, the manufacturers do not recommend using a compact tractor for that. And you can find a good 45 horsepower, say an old John Deere or International or something, for about $8,000. And then if you decide you want a round baler, you're looking at about $12,000, because you're going to need about a 65 horse tractor, and you're still looking at a 30-year-old tractor. You're not going to go buy a new tractor for $12,000. You're looking at 1980s, maybe 1970s. You may be able to get into the 90s with a two-wheel drive tractor, but you're definitely not going to find a four-wheel drive tractor. And with these tractors, you're probably going to want a loader on it because, let's face it, the front end loader just makes that tractor so much more useful. So you can add another $2,500 to $3,000 on top of that price. So you could be at $11,000 or $15,000 each for a tractor. So now you're looking at somewhere between $25,000 and $37,000 just for your hay equipment, including your tractors. And then you still need a fertilizer spreader or a manure spreader or both. And a fertilizer spreader is going to run you about $300 to find a used one. Manure spreader, depending on if you buy an old ground drive one like I have, or you buy a newer one, PTO, and the size of it, you could spend up to $12,000 on a spreader. But most small family farmers like myself are going to spend about $800 to $1,000, $1,200 on a decent manure spreader. And so you got to add that on. And then if you're using fertilizer, figure $13 a bag, and a small 3 to 5 acre field, I was running through 11 to 13 bags of fertilizer. If you use a manure, then you got to remember you're taking that tractor back and forth every time you load your manure spread up. You're driving 5 miles, spread it, drive back, load it, drive back, spread it. It's a lot of trips back and forth. And so I opted to buy fertilizer. I could just put the tractor and fertilizer spreader on my trailer, put the fertilizer in the truck, and drive out there and it's done. But I'm not a big advocate of commercial fertilizers, so I've got that going against me also. So you can see where this is just leading. So not everybody's as fortunate as I am, where I'm retired from the military. I'm home. I've got my kids, and I'm a full-time farmer. So I've got the flexibility to hay when the sun is right. But that's not the case with most people. So a lot of people that I know, they work full-time, and so they have to take a week's vacation to make hay, or they try to do it on a weekend. And dependent upon the weather, again, like the way the weather's been here was 100 degrees. I could cut hay in the morning, go out the next day and ted it and rake it, and then it's ready, that evening. So 2 days. But sometimes you might be looking at 3, and I've seen people have to carry it a 4th day. The hay doesn't really, once you start making hay, you're kind of on a perishable scale now. You don't want to keep tedding it, because then you lose the nutrients, and you're beating the leaves off it every time you ted the hay. So you kind of want to get it done in 2 days, 3 at the most. But if you have to take vacation time, you're looking at 3 days vacation. And is that what you want to do on your vacation? Do you want to go sweat in a hayfield and a hay barn? It was fine for the kids and I, because we were home, but is that okay for you? And so otherwise you got to try to get it in a weekend, and then you're waiting on good weather and everything else. And that leads me to my last thing, was like, if you're putting in square bales, do you have help? If you have to go out and pick up every bale in the field. Now, let's just break this down a little further. I've got 13 cows. Figure 100 bales a cow to get you through the winter, so 1,300 bales. And then the sheep, you figure another couple hundred bales, so 1,500. And then you add another 10-15%, because you don't know what the spring's going to be like. Like, you may have a drought like we did last year, and you have to feed hay earlier. So instead of feeding in November, you're feeding in October. You may have a wet spring or a cold spring. You might get late spring snowstorms, and you can't get the animals out. The grass isn't coming in, so you might have to feed until May. So you add another 10 to 15%. So now you're looking at close to 2,000 bales of hay that you have to make and get in, and that means you have to touch every bale. 2,000. You're picking it up 2,000, taking it off the truck 2,000, put it on the elevator 2,000, take it off the elevator and stack it 2,000, feed it back out 2,000. So you're handling that hay a lot of times, and then you got to try to get help. And so when my kids were a little bit smaller, that wasn't as much of a problem. But now that they're graduating high school and moving on, trying to round up help is a little bit more difficult. And so I can a lot of times get them lined up to help me, but then if you have a breakdown, they've dispersed by the time you resolve the breakdown, so you're left with that. And so then you've got round bales, which you can do as a one-man show, but you're looking at more expense up front, because you need a bigger tractor. You need the loader, you're gonna need a spear, which I didn't think about to add that, so figure $150 for a spear if you've got a quick attached loader. Then you can be a one-man show. You can bale the hay, go out, pick it up, put it on the trailer, drive the truck back with the trailer, unload it, and put it in the barn by yourself. And so that's a little bit more labor saving, but just remember the round bales that I use, they're 3x5s, and they're about 10 square bales. So if you need 2,000, you're gonna need 200 of those to get you through the winter. So just to keep that in perspective. And so now let's talk about buying hay. If I was gonna buy my hay, you can do it like I said. You can, first of all, you can go out in the field and pick it up. There's a lot of people who bale hay. They'll call you up and say, I'm baling hay tomorrow. I'm going to drop it on the ground in the field. It's $5 a bale. You can pick it up. So if you need 2,000 times 5, that's $10,000, right? $10,000 for your hay. If you wait until winter time, when the farmer's already put the hay in the barn, everybody else wants hay, you're looking at $7 a bale, $7.50 times 2,000. So you're looking at $14,000 to $16,000 for hay. And then you have to hope that you have enough revenue from your animals to pay for all that. So you can see where buying all your equipment makes a lot of sense when you're at that scale. So I've honestly decided that I'm going to cut my production down to just what I need for my family, which is 2 cows and a couple sheep, and that's it. That's all I'm going to need. So I'll need 200 bales for the cows and probably 100 bales for the sheep. So 300 bales. You can buy round bales right now for $40 a bale, and they'll load it for me. So you figure I need 20 or so round bales. So 20 round bales at $40, that's $800. So I'm looking at $800 a year. I can raise a cow and then sell it and recoup double that off the one cow that I sell. So it makes more sense to me now to scale way back, not really make that much money, but I'm not trying to fork a lot of money in the front end and then hoping to get it on the back end. It doesn't make any sense anymore to do it. I don't have the help. I would do round bales on my own land, invest on my own land, and it wouldn't be a problem. But where I don't, I have to rely on other people's land. I have to rely on outside help. It only makes sense at this point to just buy round bales. And just remember too, when you're making hay and you're farming, a lot of that time you're going to invest in your farm is time that you will be spending directly with your family or doing other things that maybe other people in your family value higher than the farm. So just make sure everybody's on board with what you're doing before you go too hog wild with it. And anyway, hopefully this video has been helpful to you, and looks like we're going to get washed out today. It's pouring rain, and I was hoping to go to a tractor parade today with my brother and my cousin and my brothers, but it looks like it's going to be a wash. So I really appreciate everybody who watches these videos, and please take a moment and subscribe to our channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.